Chapter 08 Untouched. Kane stood in front of the class, positioned at the center of the room where Professor Aaron had called him up as a volunteer for a magical defense demonstration. Who is he? That commoner who got into Class S by recommendation. What? But I heard he did well on the practical exam. I heard he stole Ian's points. What a bastard, whispers spread across the room. Already talking about me. I can hear some of you back there, you damn background extras. Don't worry, young man. We're just doing something basic, a simple demonstration. She winked at Kane, trying to reassure him. Kane stared at her. The height difference between them almost made the scene look comical. She didn't even reach his chest. To look at her properly, Kane had to lower his gaze slightly. You're not carrying any extra gear. Are you a mage? What can you do for defense? I can't use elemental spells, so I can't create magical barriers. A few laughs and whispers stirred through the room. Someone who couldn't use basic magic? How had someone like that even gotten into the academy? They wondered. But can you defend yourself? Is this why she called me down here? Just so these idiots can laugh at me? Kane had always hated being underestimated. If it were up to him, half the class would already be on the ground. But he decided to keep the mood light. Though, maybe things getting a little heated could be fun. He remembered something Marco had said earlier about Aaron's teaching style. Something he probably should have avoided. He bent down slightly. At over 1.80 meters tall, he dropped to her eye level and, with a teasing smile, rested his hands on his knees. Well, I've got my ways, but please, go easy on me, Professor. Aaron's expression didn't change, but a vein pulsed subtly on her face as she kept her polite smile. You little. I only said that as a comment. And he hit right where it hurts. She hated when people brought up her height. Even more when they treated her like a kid. But she took a deep breath. She was here as a teacher. And besides, she really did want to see what he was capable of. She had watched part of the practical exam. She'd noticed something strange in the way Kane manipulated mana. It was unusual. She wanted to understand it better. And maybe teach him a little lesson in the process. All right. Let's start with something simple. Get ready. She stepped back gracefully, almost gliding across the floor. Kane didn't move. He stood there, hands in his pockets, like he already knew what was coming. Arrogance? Or confidence? Aaron wondered. Let's find out. Without seals or chance, she cast a basic impact spell. Whoosh! The orb shot through the air in a straight, fast, concentrated line. But just as it was about to hit him, something strange happened. It vanished in midair, as if it had collided with a barrier no one could see or understand. Kane remained still, like nothing had happened. His eyes steady, his breathing calm. He didn't even blink at the failed impact. What? Did you see that? The whispers grew louder. He didn't even move. Did the professor cancel the spell? Wow, how did he do that? Lyra, surprised, turned to Elena. That was contact redirection, I think. You just made that up, didn't you? Oh, yeah, Elena had gotten distracted. She couldn't talk like she knew things about Kane in front of Lyra, that would look weird. But Elena knew exactly what Kane had done. Even if she didn't remember all the details, she recognized the technique instantly. He was using his internal mana as fuel to create vector-based defenses. She probably called him up already knowing what he was capable of. You think Professor Aaron did it on purpose? Aaron acts all relaxed, but she's meticulous. She spread mana through the room before class started to detect those with a more stable internal flow. Ah, so I wasn't imagining things when I felt mana in the air earlier. She picked him because his mana is absurdly consistent. But was that the only reason? She looks kinda irritated. That's his problem now. At the center of the room, Aaron started intensifying her attacks. He really doesn't use shields or runes, just pure mana. She cast another spell. Thump! The muffled sound echoed as if the magic had collided with a wall made of compressed air. The spell vanished on impact, without causing any visible effect. No. That's more than just mana. Determined to go further, she raised one hand. Her lips moved slightly as if she were casting something. How about we heat things up a bit? A thunderclap echoed through the room. Lightning crackled between her fingers. My spells are unraveling before even touching you. But I want to see how you handle this. Lightning magic doesn't need to touch. Just getting close causes damage. Let's see, don't worry. It'll only hurt for 2 seconds, max. Kane's eyes widened slightly. 2 seconds? Right away, he remembered the time back on Earth when he tripped over an exposed fan wire. 2 seconds had been more than enough to traumatize him. Judging by his face, definitely has a bad history with lightning magic. The murmurs in the room got louder. Now he's screwed. I think the professor went too far. For someone who got in by recommendation, he deserves it. Kane took his hands out of his pockets. He took a deep breath. The goal was to ignore the voices around him. But he couldn't. A faint smile appeared. You made a mistake, Professor, that spell won't work. Zock! The lightning sliced through the air, shooting straight toward him. It was fast and precise. The room held its breath. Kane raised his hand. He whispered something. Those who were paying close attention swore they saw his lips say, 0. At that moment, mana flowed through Kane's arm into his open palm. It was smooth, but dense. As if he injected something invisible into the air itself. All of it happened in less than a second. No one could see it, but the particles around him began to behave differently, slowly dispersing moisture and charged ions in the environment. The lightning bolts streaked toward him like serpents of light ready to bite, but before they got close, something broke them. The current lost cohesion, weakened, and completely dissolved. Tzrrrk. A muffled sound spread through the space, as if the air had effortlessly absorbed the impact. The attack didn't even reach him. The zone in front of Kane had become useless for conduction. With no destination and no circuit, lightning magic had nowhere to go. And just like that, it vanished. His eyes didn't shift. His hand remained raised. The silence didn't come from shock, but confusion. It was like the students were trying to figure out if they'd actually seen what just happened. Aaron watched him with more interest than surprise. He didn't reflect it, or absorb it, he simply erased the path. He broke the conduction and created a field that denied the very structure of the spell. Kane slowly lowered his hand, the smile still on his face. Looks like it actually worked. She hit me with electricity, never imagining I'd know how to cut the wires. Let's call it a reverse Faraday cage. Author's note: a Faraday cage is a structure that blocks electric fields, preventing electricity from passing through via conduction. He actually managed to repel my attack? How? If that's the case, how about we now try? Before she could finish the sentence, a soft sound echoed through the room. It was the bell. Class had come to an end. Aaron sighed deeply, trying to hold back the urge to cast another spell. You idiot, what are you doing? You're here as a teacher. She straightened her posture and gave the class a wide smile. As you can see, your classmate is excellent at magical defense. He almost made this poor professor feel like giving up on demonstrating anything. The class laughed, some genuinely, others awkwardly. But among the smiles, there was a particular group whispering with a certain bitterness. TCH. Acting all smug just because he blocked one lightning spell. The professor went easy on him. If she wanted to, he'd be on the floor. Cocky commoner, making the professor look bad, Kane ignored all the looks around him with his usual calm, like none of it had anything to do with him. They're already talking about me. I can hear some of you back there, you damn bastards. Aaron then turned to Kane and gave him a discreet, but obvious wink, just enough to irritate some students even more. Thank you very much for the great demonstration, Kane. She then turned her attention back to the class. We'll end class here, and for homework, I want everyone to train their magical defenses. I'll personally be checking each one in the upcoming lessons. Some students shouted with excitement after hearing that. Being personally evaluated by Erin was rare and highly valued, even among the more skeptical students in the class. It was a chance to show their potential directly to one of the most respected instructors in the academy. Chapter 09 Boundaries Matter. Kane was walking down the hallway after leaving the magic combat class with Professor Erin. Dude, what was that thing you did? Marco was next to him, talking non-stop about what he had just witnessed. He kept praising the professor, her style, but most of all, he couldn't stop thinking about what Kane had done during class. Of course, Kane would have called that much talking an exaggeration. In his opinion, any conversation that went beyond 3 lines already qualified as background character rambling. That was nothing. What do you mean nothing? You neutralized all the professor's attacks. And that last one? How did you stop that lightning spell? Fair question. Marco wasn't the only one wondering how Kane had simply cancelled the spell. The attack didn't even reach him. It vanished before it got close. Blocking magic was common. But cancelling a spell completely? For people who lived and breathed magic, that was basically insane. But for Kane, someone from a world where magic didn't exist and physics was the only rule, it was logical. Expected. He remembered the moment, the lightning spell coming in a straight line, the professor smiling, and him raising his hand. All he did was channel his power. Of course, it wasn't just regular mana, but his unique ability of vector manipulation. He injected energy into the space around his body with precision, shaping invisible vectors around himself. A kind of invisible field formed, altering the air and pushing away the particles that would carry electricity. The rule was simple. No circuit, no discharge. The spell dissipated before it even touched him. Just a bit of physics. Physics? It was partly true. The concept made sense back on Earth. But here in Vehart, Kane had access to a power that turned what would have been a wild theory on Earth into reality. It was like he had his own domain. Of course, that didn't make him invincible. He had just been lucky that the professor used an electric spell. If it had been something more chaotic or a higher level spell, he'd be screwed. Be quiet, Marco. That doesn't matter to you. Didn't you say your specialty was light magic? Then you'll never be able to do that. Annoying extra, asking things even I can't explain properly. What could Kane even say? Oh, I just snapped my fingers and it happened? Or maybe, actually, I was a physics student in my boring previous life and used a bit of basic knowledge? It wasn't a lie. But he couldn't say that. And since he didn't know how to explain it in magical terms, screw it. While Marco kept talking as they walked, Kane kept looking away, searching for something more interesting than that conversation. That's when he spotted Yen further down the hall. She was standing still, like she was waiting for someone. And judging by how she was looking at him, Kane had a strong feeling that someone was him. Let's turn here. Huh? Sure. They took a left, heading toward the cafeteria. Hey, you. Don't ignore me again. Didn't help. Yen was already walking fast behind them, drawing everyone's attention. When are you going to stop ignoring me? Do we have anything to talk about? Kane answered without even turning around, still walking beside Marco. Kane, maybe you shouldn't talk to her like that. She's from the Valterian family. Hey, don't bring up my family. I'm sorry. I'll leave you two alone. Yen hated when people mentioned her family at school. In fact, she hated the idea of using her last name to get anything. As if being ignored by Kane wasn't bad enough, now I'm getting slapped around by someone who just got here? Realizing he was getting sidelined, Marco left to let them talk it out. I didn't come here to use my family's influence. Perfect. Then you can leave too. What? To anyone who knew Kane had tried to get close to Yen when he first arrived at the academy, that would have sounded crazy. But that wasn't the kind of approach he wanted. At least, not yet. He already had an idea of what she wanted from him. About your powers, how do you manage such good control over them? Bingo! Not just from Yen's response, but from the fact that she was right in front of him. He looked at the door. Cafeteria. I'm actually starving. Are you even listening to me? He turned his head. Yen was watching him with a sincere look in her eyes. She really wanted to understand. What do you mean how? You just train until you get the results you want. It was a simple answer. But for someone like Yen, who had been stuck for years because she couldn't control her mana well, it was like saying, keep failing until something works. She didn't have that kind of time to waste. If she didn't understand the cause of the mistake, she'd never improve. And somehow, she felt like Kane could see that. Even if it meant swallowing her pride as a noble. The real problem was having to ask someone like him for help. She came back to reality and looked around for him again. Kane was already holding a tray, piling food like a warrior after a long day of battle. Do you seriously not know basic table manners? His tray looked more like a banquet platter. Rice piled to the edge, 3 huge chunks of meat, vegetables scattered like decoration, 2 chicken legs stacked like trophies, stuffed bread, sauce dripping down the sides, and a banana stuck in the middle like part of the main course. I used to live alone. Never learned that stuff. Yen, who had sat next to him, watched in disbelief. He's a complete barbarian. Kane was chewing on a chicken leg while using a spoon in his other hand to eat rice. For someone from an aristocratic family, using a spoon for anything other than soup was basically a crime against good manners. Yen almost sighed out loud. Kane, still with his mouth full, replied, "Sorry, I'm not from a noble family." It was true he wasn't from nobility, but coming from Earth, where etiquette was easy to access, maybe that excuse didn't quite hold up. But Kane never really cared about that. He was the kind of guy who laughed at posts like, "Ha ha, really? People eat pizza with a fork and knife in Brazil?" All while holding 3 stacked slices and biting into them all at once. Basically, while you go overboard with manners, I go overboard with the lack of them. But the ironic part was that a part of Yen actually felt a little bad for him. She figured that, being a commoner, he probably came from a place where etiquette just wasn't a thing. He paused for a moment and drank a glass of juice, feeling a wave of relief through his body. So you want me to help you with your magic control? It's not help. I just want a few tips on how to improve. He stared at her, almost in disbelief at how she dodged the obvious. Is she seriously trying to pretend she doesn't need my help? Kane thought it was hilarious how nobles behaved. Even when they had a problem, they tried to look self-sufficient. And sometimes they masked it with that old favor exchange trick. I already told you. I don't want to help with that. Why not? That was a good question. Kane was a commoner. No money, no connections, no support network. Someone like him turning down help from a noble of the prestigious Veltarian family, part of the Third Magic Tower, would seem like an idiot to anyone thinking logically. You have nothing to offer me. That sentence could drive any noble crazy. After all, nobles had everything commoners didn't. But the thing is, Kane wasn't exactly driven by logic. He lived in the moment. And at that moment, he already had everything he needed: shelter, food, and a decent bed. If everything went south, he could become an adventurer after graduation. Not the ideal plan, but not something he wanted to think about right now either. Between option A, suffer now for a maybe better future, and option B, enjoy the present with no headache. Kane always chose option B. And besides, he really wasn't in a rush to get close to Yen. But she didn't seem like someone ready to give up. I've been watching you. I noticed your power has a cost, and your body doesn't handle it very well. Great, she's becoming a pain. Kane started blaming himself for showing up at the end of the practical exam and taking down the boss. That little test of his gave her an opening. He finished his meal and looked at her more seriously. So? What do you have to offer me? Yen crossed her arms, trying to hide a small smile that was clearly visible to Cain. My family is part of the third magic tower. We have access to research most other houses can't even dream of. She paused briefly and noticed the slight sparkle in Cain's eyes. He looked genuinely interested. Perfect. He's hooked. One of our tower's projects involves vitality condensers. They're magical crystals that, once refined, help strengthen the body from the inside out. It's not healing or a temporary buff. It's gradual reinforcement, but just as she finished, Cain's curious expression shut down suddenly and dramatically. It was like watching a window slam shut. He stood up with his tray and said flatly, "Magic steroids." What? No. They're not steroids. Are you sure? Because it really sounds like steroids. She huffed. Idiot. Cain stood up, taking his tray with him. Either way, no thanks. Not in the mood to inject crystals into my kidney just to stop coughing after using magic. Then he stopped. Turned slowly, took a few steps back, and stopped right in front of Yen. He leaned in just enough to look her in the eyes, way too serious for what he was about to say. And I'm also not risking my little guy breaking down. Who knows what side effects that stuff has? Yen froze. Her face turned red instantly. Her soul left her body for half a second. She turned to the side, visibly shaken. You're a complete idiot. Cain probably wouldn't care, but I do. If you enjoyed the chapter, leave a rating, it helps a lot. Chapter 10, The Price of Strength. Raiden slid across the open training field, the metallic sound of blades mixing with the rhythm of heavy breathing echoing between the stone pillars and the low vegetation around them. The sky above was clear, with slow-moving clouds crossing the soft blue, and sunlight filtered through the tree branches lining the field. It was the kind of morning that invited anyone to enjoy a nice cup of coffee by the window, listening to birdsong and feeling the lazy sun on their face. But not for Veyhart's students. You're going hard today, Raiden, something I should know about? I already told you, Darien, don't go easy on me. Hit for real. Darien was a spearman. Tall, dark-haired, and calm. He was the type who always carried an ironic smile, even during intense fights. Raiden, on the other hand, was precise. His movements wasted nothing. Every step, every sword swing, was carefully calculated. But Darien wasn't someone who lagged behind. Alright, since it's you, I don't mind getting serious. He spun his spear and blocked a sideways attack from Raiden with strength. The impact made a dry sound. Clang. Some students nearby started watching closely. Hey, it's those two again, Raiden and Darien? Always worth watching. That spear style, looks like it's dancing. But Raiden's no joke either. His strikes are heavy. And that's without using mana. To anyone watching the scene, Raiden looked focused, but the truth was his mind was somewhere else. He was thinking about the conversation he had with Professor Aaron 3 days ago, right after the magic combat class. As he was leaving the room, she called him Raiden. He stopped. I watched your performance during the practical test. You did very well. He was surprised by the compliment and thanked her. Getting praised wasn't new to Raiden. It had always been that way. He was always seen as the genius of the Velmar family, the natural heir to the traditional Celestine swordsmanship. Celestine swordsmanship was known for its fusion of physical technique and magical flow. The precise strikes could interrupt spells, destabilize magic in progress, or pierce enchanted barriers with the right force and rhythm. A sword style only the best of the Velmar family could master. Since he was a child, everyone pointed to Raiden as the future of the art, someone with sharp reflexes, flawless posture, and a natural talent for channeling mana through a blade. He wasn't just expected to become a master, he was the one meant to take the style to a whole new level. Even coming from a respected noble family, praise from Aaron still carried weight. But I also noticed you don't seem too confident in magical combat. The problem is your defense, right? Still not trusting it? But he knew that, coming from a teacher like Aaron, praise always came with real criticism. It wasn't flattery. It was someone who saw potential and wanted to push harder. He stared at her in silence. He couldn't deny it. I'm still trying to improve that. You already performed really well, Raiden. Don't get distracted by others. Focus on your own growth. The results will come with time. To anyone else, that would be motivating advice. But for Raiden, the part about not getting distracted by others stung. He took it as a direct reminder, maybe even a warning. Anyone who had seen the test and then watched Aaron's class would understand the subtext. There was someone among them completely out of the norm. Hey, what that guy did there, forget it. He's just beyond the curve, thack. The sound of blade against metal snapped Raiden back to the present. Stay focused, Raiden. Darien came forward with a powerful thrust. The sound of the blade cutting through the air came strong. Whoosh! Raiden gripped his sword tightly, spinning his body with precise control. Darien's blade ricocheted off with a dry metallic sound, like it had hit an invisible steel wall. Clank! The impact made Darien lose his balance for a second. And that was all Raiden needed. He stepped forward, calm and steady, stopping with his sword gently touching his opponent's neck. The training was over. Ha! Good thing we weren't using mana, Darien laughed as he dropped down to sit on the ground, wiping the sweat off his forehead. It was afternoon. They were at the end of Professor Dargan's class, where he talked about the effects of mana on the human body. It was one of those theoretical classes most people ignored, but not Elena. She knew it was an important class. At least for people like her. Not all magic used by humans went through the body without consequences. In games and books, it was common to see scenes of mages using absurd amounts of mana, casting epic spells, and at worst, ending up a bit tired afterward. But in Chronos realms, the rules were different. If Elena used magic without control, she could burn her mana pathways. The internal channels that carried mana through the body, like invisible veins shaped by the soul. And once damaged, those channels didn't heal easily. Even as a member of the Elrian family, revered for their spiritual connection to fire, Elena still had to train every day to control her flames without suffering side effects. Not all mages felt this. The most common spells rarely caused physical damage. But there were some, like hers, that consumed something more. She glanced ahead at the row in front of her. Kane was leaning back in his seat, chin resting on his hand, eyes half closed like he was floating between sleep and boredom. The afternoon light came through the window and landed on him, making the white strands of his hair stand out even more. He looked disconnected from everything. But she knew that wasn't really the case. Just like her, Kane felt it in his body too, maybe even more intensely. Being someone who had come back from the future, Elena knew him better than anyone else there. She knew what happened when he pushed himself too far. One small mistake, and the impulses he manipulated could crash inside his body. It was like triggering an internal magical short-circuit. Blood from the nose, ears. Shaking hands. Muscle pain. And sometimes, that weird sensation that his body was being pulled in different directions at once. But she also knew that, in time, he could learn to reduce those effects. The scariest thing wasn't his strength or the sudden fame among students. It was the fact that someone who came from nowhere, with an ability that looked more like a curse than a gift, had broken through every limit and made it to Class S in an academy reserved only for prodigies. Calling him a genius felt almost too simple. The real issue was if he remained the same Kane from before. Humans often find a kind of balance, a scale between effort and reward. Like someone training to lift 100 kilograms and finally managing it after a lot of sweat. Over time, that weight starts to feel light. Most people would accept that as a win. They'd enjoy the stability. The scale would finally be balanced. But some people don't stop there. They look at the 100 kilograms and want to lift 200. Even knowing it would drag them back into pain, risk, and failure. Even knowing their body isn't ready. Kane was that type.